The Angels were outclassed, outcoached, outmanaged, outstrategized, outplayed, outhustled, out everything this past weekend. And today we're deciding if they are out of the race. Let's chat about it. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click that bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's show is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use our promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Remember, terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
My name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we are very excited to be here for you Monday through Friday this week. I know it's the All-Star break, but Mike, we're going to be here all 5 days talking about the Angels, talking about everything related to this team, having conversations about the next half, the trade deadline, all that stuff. But Mike, most importantly is tomorrow we're going to be talking about Nolan Scanuel, Simpson, Swanson,
Slippy, Swanson, Swanson. I was way off.
Shanuel.
Yes.
Nolan Shanuel. Man, I thought you'd be the one to mess up the name, not me.
That's why I didn't say it.
That's why you didn't say it. But the Angels did take him number 1 in the draft. And of course, they don't have a second pick. They will have a 3rd round pick that we will know by Monday. So that way we can talk about all of that on tomorrow's show. So again, they'll make their next pick tonight and a few others, I believe, after that as well. So we'll have more details on the Angels and the draft all tomorrow. We're looking forward to that conversation. Mike, we got to recap this Dodgers series this weekend. It was a 2-game set, and we're going to share some personal thoughts about how the Super Halo Bros feel about this team after the first half. Let's get to game 1.
Yeah, game 1 was on Friday, and Johnny, they tried a new lineup, which I appreciated. Shohei batting leadoff, trying to get him some protection in this lineup. They had Moniak batting third. I actually kind of like that. And then they kind of stretched the lineup out a bit. They had Renfroe batting 7th and then Theis batting 8th. And so I like that. So here's the good. It's a small amount of good because there's going to be a lot of bad, right? So the good was Moose and Moniak each had a home run in this game. And Joe Adell was playing in this game and playing center field, and he took a home run away from Max Muncy in center field because Griffin Canning was throwing up some meatballs. And so luckily he had Joe Adell in the outfield. And Johnny, that was about it. That was the good that happened on Friday because, as I mentioned, Griffin Canning was awful, John. He had 2 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 4 runs, 1 walk. He had no strikeouts. He really didn't have any swings and misses.
Not at all.
3 solo home runs. And then you thought maybe Tyler Anderson could come in, the Angels' 2nd round pick this year. The Tyler Anderson could come in and he could actually maybe stop the bleeding, but he gave up a solo home run. The Dodgers hit 4 in this game, and Anderson had a gift of an out. There was a challenge where it was an out. They called it on the field as an out. It was safe. It was a Dodger outfielder. I can't remember who it was, but running down the line, and then there was kind of this confusion at first base. Was Anderson going to catch it? Was Renfroe going to catch it? And Escobar kind of lobs it over. Renfroe tries to find the bag. They call him out. They want to replay this. They send it to New York, and I'm looking at it. Fans are looking at it. Wayne Randazzo and Gooby are looking at it, and they're like, oh, man, they're going to overturn this. And the call stood. The call stands. And so how does Anderson respond to that? Gives up a single and a walk and a 2-run double to Mookie Betts. He finishes 4 1/3 with 4 hits, 3 runs, 5 Ks. Johnny, I want to get your thoughts on this game, but I just wrote down some notes. There was no fight. There was no energy. There was no adjustment. There was no strategy. There was no running hard. Looking at you, Taylor Ward, I know he had a bit of a groin issue, but he hasn't ran hard all year long. There was no nothing in this game. And watching it was just hard to watch. They were really, really pathetic. They did not look like professional ball players, the entire team. And the only guy that really looked like he wanted to be there and wanted to do something was Mickey Moniak. And Moniak had a big 3-run home run to try to get them back into the game. But then the Angel pitching staff gave it right back.
Yeah, losing this one 11-4. Why did everybody forget how to pitch all of a sudden? It just happened this week where, top to bottom, everybody is like, oh, how do I do this again? And for Griffin Canning to go out there and cough up as much as he did in just 2 2/3 innings, Tyler Anderson, you thought, okay, they're using him because they don't have to use him for another week. He can pitch out of the bullpen. It was the perfect time, but
yeah,
man, what in the world happened to this team? And everything good that like the Monstars came and stole all their talent, Mike. They took,
yes.
If it was even there to begin with, maybe we've just been getting lucky. I do have to say, I did like Ohtani in the leadoff spot. And I know they did that the next night as well. And the reason why is because if he's not going to get a pitch to hit without any protection behind him, he's going to be able to take those walks, and he can afford that. Of course, he did hit a home run on Saturday night, which was great. We'll get to that. But I did like him in the number 1 spot. You mentioned Taylor Ward trying to go after that ball in left field and couldn't decide if he wanted to dive or play it safe and protect his UZR and protect his stats for fielding percentage. But that was a disaster. Yeah. And to me, to find out he had some sort of groin strain later, it made sense. But I was like, you know what? Bench him for that. Like there's no room for this on this team. And it's just so ridiculous the way that this stuff has been going for the Angels. You got Velasquez in there every single night. I don't know who David Fletcher ticked off to be benched night after night, but I'd much rather see him in there. Of course, he did get into Saturday, and we'll talk about that as well and the reason why he got in there on Saturday. But you're right. I turned off the game early. First time all season that I went, all right, I'm done. There's better ways to spend my Friday night. And we do our best to tune into every game and make sure we're covering it, whether that's we're out and about and it's on the radio or one of us is at home watching the whole thing and taking notes and whatnot. I turned it off. It was like Friday night. You know what? I'll catch the recap. I'll find out how the rest of this game goes later, because there's just no incentive to tune into these guys and the way that they embarrass themselves against the Dodgers. I mean, look, the Dodgers, of course, are always going to be a competitive team, but that was just embarrassing. And the truth is, you score 4 runs, you get a home run from Mickey Moniak and whatnot. You can make this a competitive game if there's competitive pitching. Yeah. And Mike, the thing that's carried us so far this season has been a lot of competitive pitching, especially from guys like Griffin Canning and Reed Detmers, and of course, Shohei Ohtani, and keeping us in the game that way. And our bullpen has been decent. It was really good there for a while. It was, top 5 in the league for a while. It's everything that they've done well just completely fell out the back of the trunk. Like it was like you left the trunk open and drove away, and everything good that you ever had spilled out onto the road behind you. So I don't know what's going on with this team right now.
Yeah, it felt a lot like last year's team. It felt like the Steve Cishek team, the bullpen team, right?
It felt worse. It felt worse to me.
And quite honestly, we're going to share a tweet from Jeff Fletcher in the next segment, but that is exactly what he said. Like, this team has been just completely out of it. They're not even close in those games. I mean, they lost 2-0 to the Dodgers 2 nights in a row, right? But these 2 games that they lost, they were not even close. And in just this last week, it was just not close. And they're not even competitive. They bring in a guy, and it's not competitive at all. And you're waving the white flag when you bring in Aaron Loup. And listen, don't give me that garbage of Aaron Loup has really good stats since this time. He's Aaron Loup. And so because he had an anomaly.
Since we got our baseball cards in the mail, that's what happened.
But the reality is he's an anomaly. This is an anomaly in his career with the Angels. And the fact that he's still on this team, I think, is because they don't have anybody to replace him, because Colton Ingram really wasn't great when he came up. And I understand why they have him in there, because they probably need to eat some innings in some of these really bad games. The problem is he never keeps anything close. And so it was just a mess. It was just a complete and utter disaster this weekend. And game 1 on Friday was the start of that disaster. And what was frustrating is that you had some hope that maybe they would at least be able to recover the next night. But as we're going to talk about, they didn't.
Yeah, we'll get to that conversation about game 2 up in just a minute here. And we'll be sharing our thoughts about how we're feeling about the Halos and the remainder of this season. We're going to talk about all of that coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never taking a moment to think about what you need from yourself. And we spend all of our time giving, and it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out. Therapy can actually give you the tools to find a more balanced life, and you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. And this is why you should give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills, setting boundaries, and it empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It really is for everybody. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today, and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Locked On Everydayers, join us every day this week as we talk Halos, talk about the All-Star Game, Home Run Derby, and of course, the Angels and their number 1 draft pick, Nolan Schanuel. Schanuel? Schanuel. That's going to be hard to say.
Yeah.
Got to get used to that. Samuel Schanuel. Yeah, that's how I'll remember it, right? It seems like
you're saying that right. I'll have to look up the pronunciation.
Schanuel. It's correct. That's right. So we are going to be talking about him and, of course, the other Angels draft picks tomorrow on the show. Mike, Saturday night, Angels lose 10-5, and right out of the gate, he just how does this even it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, you're excited. You see Joe Adell batting cleanup. You're like, awesome. Dude can mash, get him a fastball and he'll crush it, right?
Ohtani was on base, man. It was going to be great, right?
It was going to be great. He struck out, and right after that, he's twisting and he's turning and he's feeling something in his side. One at bat, and he's removed from the game with left oblique discomfort. You know who else had oblique discomfort, Michael? Matt Moore. How long has he been out? A long time.
Yep.
Zach Neto. How long has he been out? Also a long time. Now, oblique injuries can vary, right?
Yep.
But not a good sign when you're without Mike Trout and Joe Adell came up to replace him and be an outfielder that you can rely on for some pop. And now he's going to be out as well. So beautiful way to start this game against the Dodgers.
Right.
Suddenly you have noted cleanup hitter David Fletcher taking over because he had to sub in at second, which moved Rengifo to left field. And Rengifo, Louie.
Yeah,
tries to make it.
That's all you can say.
Tries to make a diving play, doesn't come up with it, picks up the ball. Airmails.
Yeah.
If there was ever the dictionary definition for airmailing a baseball, find this clip of Luis Rengifo trying to throw home and watch where it goes and watch how it advances the runners as well. So Louis Rengifo in the outfield is no Angels in the outfield. That's for sure. We could have used all the help we could get. I think we need to get what's his name in to help us out and clear out whatever curse is going on with the Angels. Because that's what it is. They're cursed, Mike. Right. It's ridiculous.
Well, and Reed Detmers comes in and he takes a page out of Griffin Canning's book from the night before, and he gives up 2 solo home runs in the first 2 innings. Johnny gives up 7 in 3 1/3 innings. That's
unreal.
More earned runs than he's allowed in his previous 31 2/3 innings. And that was over 5 starts. He only gave up 5 earned runs. And the Angels starters in the last 10 games had an ERA of almost 8. And then the hard part is that the Angels have lost 10 straight against the Dodgers, dating back to August of 2021. Here's the combined score, 60-17 was the combined score of all of those games. Now, I mentioned Jeff Fletcher in the last segment and a tweet that he sent out. Johnny, he actually was responding to somebody who was saying that this kind of feels like last year. And he said, actually, at the moment, they're playing worse than they did during the 14-game losing streak. They had chances to win a bunch of those games. In this streak, they just keep falling behind 4 to 5 runs right away. And
true.
It's awful. It's awful to, when you're out and about, as you mentioned, that sometimes we are, and I get the updates on my phone, when it keeps buzzing, I'm like, dear God, this is awful. Like, I can't even enjoy my burger. Like, I didn't enjoy my burger on Saturday because
got indigestion.
It just kept falling. It was like a waterfall. And one thing that I noticed, John, and I think that this is something that perhaps Perry Manassian is going to address or is aware of. If he's not, let me make him aware of it, is the depth on this team that he wanted to solidify. The thing that I noticed is that we need more depth. Because you cannot rely on our guys. You can't rely on Velasquez. You can't rely on Rengifo. You can't even rely on Fletch. Like, they aren't depth pieces. You have great guys who are hurt right now in Zach Neto and in Brandon Drury. Quite honestly, and even with Gio Urshela, like, those guys are the starters. They're the depth pieces. And then underneath them, if they're healthy, would be an Escobar or a Moustakas. Because the 3 guys that I just mentioned are not depth pieces. It feels exactly like it did last year when we had triple A type of players that were up, right? Because
quad A.
These guys are just not quality at bats. They're not playing quality defense. Even Squid has not looked like the Squid that we were really excited about playing defense, at least last year. This team needs extra depth. And I think that part of what we're actually like dealing with right now is the Epler years and the Dipoto years. Just don't have guys that we can go and grab. And I think it's why the Angels are drafting the way that they're drafting, because they need to immediately have guys who can make an impact on the major league roster, not in the minor leagues. They need guys to come up and immediately perform right now, because the guys that we have just can't do that. And there isn't an adjustment. There doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency. There doesn't seem to be an excitement. There doesn't seem to be anything except Joe Adell. When Joe Adell comes up, he's pumped. He's fired up. He's excited. I know he hurt his oblique, but quite honestly, we need more depth, and the depth that we currently have are just not – they're guys that can fill a role in AAA, and then maybe perhaps we can fool somebody and we can trade them. That's literally how I see those 3 names that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think by virtue of the fact that they're all up at the same time. They're all in the lineup at the same time. They're all playing at the same time. Like, the way a normal roster works that doesn't have thousands of injuries on it because your training staff doesn't know what the heck they're doing, which is like, is this like the 3rd new training staff we've had in as many years? I feel like.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Mike, in no world should Rengifo and Velasquez and David Fletcher all be in the lineup at the same time.
Right.
Because in the real world, you have, oh, you know what? Brandon Drury's out. We need a new second baseman. Hey, we got our options. We can do Fletcher. We can do Rengifo, but he's still surrounded by Trout and Ohtani and Moniak and all those guys.
Yeah.
And you feel pretty good about having a spot in the lineup that's not going to do much for you, but you can at least have a body there. That's the way depth is supposed to work.
Right.
But when you lose Brandon Drury, Gio Urshela, Anthony Rendon, Mike Trout, like all these guys, it's insane to me just how the Angels have cookie crumbled before the All-Star break. And it doesn't make any sense to me how all of these guys can get hurt so badly and be out for so long. And when everything's good news and bright and sunshiny and rainbows and butterflies and flowers, oh yeah, they'll be back tomorrow. They'll be back sometime this week, we think.
Right.
And then, 8 weeks later, we're still waiting on Brandon Drury. Oh, I got this thing in my elbow or my shoulder. You didn't check that? You didn't do an MRI on Brandon Drury? Like the beginning of the week, you're waiting until, oh, you know what? I'm not recovering as well as I thought I would. Like, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you getting this information as soon as possible? I understand that maybe he did feel something later on, but the fact that they had to go and look and make sure nothing was there. You didn't do an MRI on Monday? Like, you didn't look for a break or anything like that? Like, what are we doing here, folks? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's a poorly run organization. As much as Perry Manassian is doing his best to increase the depth at the major leagues and draft well and replenish our farm system, nothing changes until leadership changes. And this is a Artie Moreno problem trickling all the way down, Mike. And it goes back to showing, bad training staff, bad practices, bad everything. And this is why you have hundreds of guys on the IL, because you don't have what other teams have. You don't have the systems in place that other teams have. I said, put Shohei in charge of the training staff.
Absolutely.
That guy does more than anybody else on this team, and he's not hurt. And
his worst issue is his finger, right? Like, he doesn't have any issues with his body. And I don't quite understand why in the world guys like Michael Stefanik and Trey Cabbage aren't up on this roster, especially with the offense not being able to come through. Why are you having Velasquez and Fletcher up there? I get Fletcher is complicated, but they figured it out the first time. I think they need to figure it out again. But
nobody's going to claim him. No.
Right. And that's the thing is you'll notice anytime the Angels DFA somebody and they do clear waivers and the Angels end up putting it back on their Salt Lake team, you know?
Right. Exactly. So again, a frustrating night. Again, the pitching falls apart. I don't know why the Angels pitching is just suddenly falling apart. It's just somebody deflated this team and took away all their joy, because right now it's completely void of anything exciting at the moment.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by Sleeper. Sleeper is a fantasy sports and real money gaming app focused on bringing people together through sports and gaming. And this app has become the fastest organically growing fantasy platform in the world with over 5 million active users just last year. So here's how it works. You can choose between 2 and 8 of your favorite players in Major League Baseball and decide if they will perform better or worse than the predicted stats. And some of the stat categories include home runs and triples and stolen bases and more. And if you get your picks right, you could win big, because Sleeper is now offering a payout of up to 100 times what you bet when you play the 8-pick contest. The Sleeper app works quickly too. Entries can be made in 30 seconds or less, and there's a safe and fast withdrawal in all payouts. So download the Sleeper app today, and when you do, use our promo code LOCKEDON when you sign up, and you'll get an instant deposit match of $100. Check out Sleeper today.
Getting into our last conversation of the day, it's just a matter of sharing our thoughts, Mike. What do the Super Halo brothers think after this first half? What do they think of the first half? Where do we go from here? Mike, why don't you start us out?
When you think back to, I think June 18th, we were 41-33. And then we've just completely fallen apart. And I want to blame the injuries, John. I want to say that it's because of the injuries, and I think that they have a huge factor into all of this. But the other thing that I see is no motivation. I see no adjustments. I see this team completely flat. In fact, I loved this quote from Yu Darvish. He was asked about Ohtani and why he's such a great hitter. And Darvish said this: I think he's very Japanese. He changes his swing if he's being attacked in the same place. So rather than waiting for a certain pitch, he decides to hit on a certain pitch for a certain count. He's using his brain. And this is why Shohei is Shohei Ohtani. And the fact that the rest of the team can't do that really baffles me. How did you make it to the major leagues? Because what you're showing us, especially in the last week or two, is a team of players that would barely be successful at AAA. And as you mentioned, all of the pitching has fallen apart. As you mentioned, all of the hitters just continue with the same approach. We were approached less last year. Now this year, it feels like we're just stuck. We're doing the same things in the same way. And I don't want to say this out loud. I don't know if I fully believe this, because I know that there's been a lot of injuries, but I really think that if we don't get a breaking news report that Phil Nevin is fired this week, I don't think that this team goes anywhere in the second half, because the stat you shared with me off air is that they're going to have to go 41-26, I think, to be able to get to at least 90 wins. I mean, they have a really big battle ahead of them. And could they get hot? Absolutely. As these new players get off the injured list and come back, that could be fantastic. But Phil Nevin has not proven that he is a manager that can bring this team together. John, our brother, brother Jeff, and between you and I, he said something to me on the 4th of July that I thought was interesting. His wife's uncle went and put a bet on the Texas Rangers in the offseason to win the World Series. The reason why he did that was not because of the players they signed, was not because of the team that they are, was because Bruce Bochy was hired as their manager. And Bruce Bochy has turned that franchise around. And that's somebody that Phil Nevin is not. Phil Nevin has not proven to be somebody that can rally. He's proven that he cannot be somebody that can motivate, especially as we've really kind of gone downhill. I think it was one of the players that said, oh, this team's not losing 14 in a row with Phil Nevin in charge. You're right. They're just going to lose 9 out of 10, and then they're going to lose 11 out of 12, right? So we're going to get wins in between, but we're not going to lose a bunch in a row. So I will not be shocked if there is a breaking news moment from Sam Blum or Rhett Bollinger or one of our guys, one of our girls that says Phil Nevin has been fired this week. I would not be shocked by that because of how terrible this team has been in the last 2 weeks.
It really is. Okay, so again, 41-26 is what the Angels need to do to get to 90 wins. That seems insane to me. That's 15 games better, 15 more wins than losses, right?
Yeah.
They got a rough schedule for the remainder of July. They have, on the bright side, Brandon Drury, hopefully coming back, Zach Neto, Matt Moore, Ben Joyce, Mike Trout in about a month. Who knows what's going to happen with Joe Adell. But you're right, Mike. I think about Phil Nevin, and I think about the opportunity to step up in a moment like this where, you know, you're down without your worst, or you're down without your best players in Mike Trout, and Rendon's gone, and all that stuff. And this is his first year as a big league manager where it wasn't like, whoops, I fell into it because, you know, Joe Madden got fired. You'd think that you'd want to be the one, even if you don't think you're coming back to the Angels next year, don't you want to audition well? Mm-hmm. Don't you want to interview well for the next team or whoever might need a manager next season? Because I look at Phil Nevin, I'm like, this is your opportunity, dude. Like, this is what you've always wanted to do the moment you got into managing. And you're blowing it. Yeah. You're absolutely blowing it at this point. You can't rally people. You can't put a decent lineup together that has consistency and continuity. You're running out Taylor Ward when I don't think Taylor Ward's quite got the hustle that the rest of the team does.
Right.
I know that he's had a decent month over the last month in that span, but you mentioned it earlier, the fact that somebody like Trey Cabbage or Michael Stefanik, gosh, even Kyron Paris or Jeremiah Jackson, I know they're not always like the heaviest of hitters, but it's life. It's a beating heart and a pulse, which this team doesn't have right now. So bring up some of the youth to supplant some of the dead weight on this team, because right now you got David Fletcher and Andrew Velasquez just being dead weight. Luis Rengifo, dead weight. And I don't know why they won't trim the fat and give guys, young guys, the opportunity to step up, especially in the absence of Mike Trout and guys that you've come to rely on. I understand wanting to have major league talent and have them perform at the major league level, guys who have been there before, which is why you get an Escobar and you get a Moustakas, right? But even those guys aren't cutting the mustard right now.
Right.
And those are the guys you brought in to replace your Gio Urshela's and your Jared Walsh's, right? So all that to say, coming into the second half, we, again, 41-26. That's a huge task. Now, the A's can win 10 games in a row against some of the best teams in baseball, and they're the A's. Yeah. And when it comes to the talent on the Angels, the talent is there. But why in the world are Griffin Canning and Reed Detmers completely falling apart? Why is Patrick Sandoval falling apart and then putting it together for the remainder of his outing? I don't understand the mentality. I don't understand where the mental toughness of this team is. And I think it has everything to do with the leadership of Phil Nevin. I know he's not out there swinging the bat or throwing the ball, but somebody's got to set a standard and set a like a mantra, like a thesis statement for this team. And they entirely don't have it. The Angels don't have a pulse. They don't have a heartbeat. So there needs to be some changes. Thank God they have a week off, and thank God they got an extra day off on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Remember, no games this week. We're going to be here to talk Angels baseball with you, and we're going to talk about the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby, all of that good stuff. So be with us on Locked On Angels, wherever you get your podcasts.
Nolan Shanuel. I got it, Mike. I got it that time. Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Well, we are going to talk about Nolan and the other draft picks that the Angels selected. And I really like Nolan because there's rumors about maybe him being on this team by next year. It might be a Zach Neto type of guy. So we'll talk all of those details tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
We hope you'll come back and join us for that. In addition to the remainder of the Angels draft picks, we'll have a lot more information on them as well. Until tomorrow's show, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.